Welcome to the 128th birthday of the founding of the Women's Institute, and we will begin this evening's program by inviting Donna Henderson to read the land acknowledgement.
Before we begin our program today, we would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands and to give gratitude for the sharing of these lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home.
Thank you, Donna, and we'll now have O Canada. We now invite Margie Taylor to lead us in Mary Stuart Collect, please.
Keep us, O Lord, from pettiness. Let us be large in thought, in word, and deed. Let us be done with fault-finding and leave off self-seeking. May we put away all pretense and meet each other face to face without self-pity and without prejudice. May we never be hasty in judgment and always generous. Teach us to put into action our better impulses, straightforward and unafraid. Let us take time for all things. Make us grow calm, serene, gentle. Grant that we may realize that it is the little things that create differences, that in the big things of life we are one. And may we strive to touch and know the great human heart common to us all. And, O Lord God, let us not forget to be kind.
Thank you, Margie. A warm welcome to each of you as we celebrate the founding of the Women's Institute. As I mentioned, it is our 128th birthday and the 106th birthday of FWIC. My name is Lynn McLean, and we are delighted that tonight's celebration is in collaboration with the Associated Country Women of the World Canada area and President Marie Kenny. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge the FWIC board, President-elect Angela Scott, Treasurer Linda Mason, Provincial Directors Brenda DeVold, Donna Henderson, Deborah Barrett, Linda Zellum, Linda James, Jacqueline Melvin, Miriam Lank, and Elizabeth Moss. We are also pleased to recognize FWIC past presidents Dr. Ellen McLean, Margaret Bile, Linda Hoy, and Marie Kenny, who is also our current ACWW Canada Area President. Tonight, we are pleased to have ACWW World President Magdi Ducoc and ACWW Executive Officer Tish Collins in attendance. As our program this evening is divided into two parts. In part one will be a conversation moderated by Denise Josh with Marie and myself, and part two will be led by Dr. Elizabeth Kelly on the topic of advocacy. As this event is recorded, please put yourself on mute. There will be an opportunity at the end of the two presentations for you to ask questions and/or to provide comments. You are welcome to put your questions in the chat box or raise your hand. We will now turn the evening over to Angela Scott.
Hi, my name is Angela Scott, and I'm the president-elect for FWIC and past president of the New Brunswick Women's Institute. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce to you our moderator for the first portion of this year's WI Day event, Denise Joss. Denise Joss is the past president of the Manitoba Women's Institute, and she served on the FWIC board for several years. Denise is a retired special education consultant and enjoys community service projects and has kept her very busy since her retirement. Welcome, Denise. Next, I have Lynn McLean. Lynn is the president of the Federated Women's Institutes of Canada, having joined the Nova Scotia Women's Institute as a member in 1981. Over the years, she has held executive roles at branch, district, provincial, and national levels, and from 2007 to 2019, served on the two committees of the Associated Country Women of the World. In addition to her work with the Women's Institute, Lynn has held several supervisory positions within the education sector and actively participates in executive roles on several boards. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Dalhousie University and a Master of Education in Administration from St. Mary's University. Growing up on a dairy and hog farm in rural Nova Scotia, Lynn is married to Jim and is a mother to two daughters and a grandmother to two grandsons. In 2023, she earned the Professional Director Certification and was awarded the Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal in recognition for her contributions to education and the community. Welcome. And next we have Marie Kenny. Marie Kenny is an author, artist, proprietor, and pastor. Humanitarian work and community capacity building have involved much of Marie's life at a local, national, and international level. Marie is the past president of PEIWI and FWIC-WI Canada, and presently she is the ACWW Canada Area President. Through both her professional and volunteer capacity, Marie has witnessed firsthand the injustice and discrimination faced by women. She has a passion for advocacy work and building strong partnerships. Her experience at the United Nations has given her a keen understanding of the necessity of working collaboratively and how holding governments accountable will enhance and advance the lives of the most vulnerable. Marie has received numerous awards, including the Adelaide Hunter Hoodless Woman of the Year, Sovereign's Medal for Volunteerism, Senate of Canada Sequential Medal, Queen Elizabeth Diamond and Platinum Jubilee medals, as well as the Premier's Award for Craft Education. Marie delights in spending time with her family, cross-country skiing, sewing, and taking beach walks with her husband Cecil in Prince Edward Island. Welcome all.
Thank you very much, Angela, for the interesting introductions of all of us. I'd like to refer to our first topic of discussion, and this is about the theme for our triennium. Together we rise. Lynn, could you please reflect on these two questions? How does this theme, how was it chosen to guide us through the next 3 years? And what does Together We Rise mean to you?
Thank you, Denise. This theme was chosen for its emphasis on unity. It underscores the significance of collaboration and collective effort. It encourages our members to unite for a common cause and conveys a sense of empowerment. This theme stresses that our strength is derived from working together. By combining our strengths and our talents, we can achieve greater outcomes. Together We Rise is also an inclusive theme. It recognizes that every member has a role to play. It is the responsibility of the FWIC board, provincial leaders, and each WI member to contribute towards a shared vision. The theme was chosen in 2024 during the inaugural meeting of the new FWIC board. Utilizing an AI tool called Metameter, directors and provincial presidents collaboratively identified keywords that encapsulated FWIC's purpose and vision. After compiling this list, we employed ChatGPT to propose potential themes. Ultimately, we selected Together We Rise. The Federated Women's Institute of Canada allows us to confront challenges and overcome them when we stand together, united as one voice, as together we rise.
Thank you for sharing this process with our members and guests. If we all use our talents and gifts towards a common goal, we can feel empowered and on the correct path. We need to think of ourselves as part of a larger jigsaw puzzle as we travel through our lives. A collaborative vision identifies that every piece is important within this puzzle. Marie, it's your turn to share what We Rise Together means to you.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, too, for inviting me to represent the Associated Country Women of the World on this very special occasion, WI Day, as you celebrate 128 years of women working together from coast to coast to coast. When I think about the phrase, together we rise, I am reminded of one simple truth. We were never meant to work in isolation. Visualize a bucket of water being filled one drop at a time. A single drop may seem small, even insignificant, but with each drop, the bucket fills. Every kind word, every act of support, and every moment we lift one another up adds to something greater than ourselves. Nature teaches us this lesson in a beautiful way. When the Canada geese fly south for the winter, they do not do it alone. They fly in a V formation. The lead goose cuts through the wind, making it easier for the others to follow. When the lead tires, another takes its place, and they continue in this pattern for thousands of miles. Flying together allows them to travel further. That is what Together We Rise means to me. It's a call to lean on one another, to support each other's dreams, to celebrate successes, and to provide strength in difficult times. For when we come together, we don't just move forward, we soar. As members of the Women's Institute, you know this better than anyone. Your work in community, your encouragement of one another, your collaborative wisdom are proof that rising together is not only possible, it is a necessity. So let's continue to lift each other up and help one another on this journey. Be that drop of water that fills the bucket. When we rise together, there is no limit on how far we can go. Thank you.
I love your example that you shared about the geese, Marie. Together, we don't just move forward, we soar. It's inspiring. And let's take a moment to honor and remember Adelaide Hunter Hoodless and Erland and Janet Lee. They had a common vision. Adelaide took her tragic situation, the loss of her child, and turned it into a positive action. She started a group to educate women about health and domestic science. These groups evolved into organizations for the betterment of society, like the Women's Institute. Our next panel topic is, who is a woman who inspires you? And how has she contributed to women's rights or empowerment? How can we follow in the footsteps of inspiring female leaders? There are so many women who are outstanding mentors and role models. One of my favorites is Eleanor Roosevelt. I think about her every time I make a cup of tea. She liked to say, a woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong it is until it's in hot water. Eleanor became part of a circle of women leaders in the 20s and 30s who worked for labor legislation, world peace, equal pay and education for women, civil rights, and affordable public housing. In the newly released movie 6888, she had a role during World War II that forced the Army to enable all soldiers to finally get their letters after 2 years of no communication home. This action had a morale-raising effect on all the soldiers. The airplane hangars full of mail finally came to them through the work of the Black Women's Army Corps. Eleanor was praised with the title First Lady of the World, and it was a tribute to her United Nations incentives for basic human rights legislation. Who inspires you, Lynn?
Well, Denise, there are many outstanding women and role models, and the one that inspires us the most will change depending on our stage in life and the circumstances we are in. As the newest president of FWIC Canada, thought I would share some about Emily Murphy, the first president of FWIC. She is someone we do not talk about very much, but one who has had a profound effect on Canada, namely in the fight for women's rights and social reform. Did you know that Emily was the first woman in Canada to be appointed in 1916 as a magistrate? In Alberta, her appointment defied the conventional legal system, as women had been excluded from all positions of authority in the judicial system. Her work as a magistrate focused on issues affecting women and children, such as domestic violence and child welfare. In the January issue of WI Connections, Elizabeth Rushton wrote about the life of Emily Murphy. Born in 1868 in Ontario, Emily Murphy was an activist, writer, and social reformer. As a passionate advocate for the rights of marginalized groups, Murphy worked to improve conditions for women regarding their legal rights and societal roles. Most of you know that Emily Murphy played a key role in the Persons case. This was the landmark legal battle that challenged the interpretation of the word persons in the British North America Act of 1867. They presented the case that women should be recognized as legal persons and eligible to sit in the Senate. The case eventually went to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in 1929, where the Privy Council voted in favor of the women's rights activists, affirming that women were indeed persons under Canadian law. Emily Murphy's legacy continues to inspire those who fight for justice and equality. She was an advocate who pushed against the barriers of gender discrimination in early 20th century Canada and remains a significant figure in the history of Canadian feminism. Emily's involvement in FWIC was a natural fit, as she believed it was important for women to speak as one voice on important issues. And what could be more important than the rights of women and social reform?
Thank you, Lynn. I wasn't aware of the depth of Emily Murphy's influence as a legal activist. Preparing for today's presentation, I researched that women could not even open a bank account without their husband's signature until 1964. Women could not be granted mortgages until the 1970s. Thank you, Emily Murphy, for all your advocacy work. Who did you choose to highlight, Marie?
As women, Denise, we have many different roles and responsibilities in our lifetime. We are wives, mothers, grandmothers, career persons, volunteers, and caregivers, just to name a few. The list goes on and on. I believe that at different stages in life, we have different role models who inspire us. For me, my mother and my grandmother Gunn were fundamental role models and incredibly inspiring women. But in the light of tonight's conversation, I would definitely say that Mrs. Alfred Watt, Margaret, or the name she preferred to be called, Madge Watt, was and continues to be an inspiring woman in my life. Her legacy, her resilience, her sense of wonder and determination all inspire me. Madge Watt was born in Collingwood, Ontario on June the 4th, 1868. Her post-secondary education was at the University of Toronto, where she received a bachelor degree. Madge was a woman of great energy and drive, who strongly believed in the power of women working together for worthwhile goals. Family and community were at the heart of all she did. And at a very young age, with a successful writing career, Madge put everything on hold to care for her very ill mother. After her husband died, Madge was a young widow with 2 small boys to raise, and she moved from her BC community to the UK to better provide for her family as a single parent. Madge was a woman of vision, determination, and action. She believed in the power of women working together. She proved that even the most difficult times, that in the most difficult times, a collective effort can change the world. During World War I, food shortages threatened families and communities. Madge mobilized women through the British Women's Institute movement, a movement modeled after a part of the Women's Institute that she was in Canada. Madge led initiatives that encouraged food production, preservation, and rationing. She taught women how to grow their own vegetables and can food for the winter. Her activities helped women ensure their families and communities had enough to eat. She understood that resilience wasn't just about surviving tough times. It was about coming together to create a solution. Drawing on the strength of what she knew, her leadership didn't just provide immediate relief. It empowered generations of women to take charge of their circumstances. She showed that when women unite with a common purpose, they are unstoppable. So, what does that mean to us today? While we may not be facing wartime food shortages, we still have challenges: hunger, food security, climate change, access to nutritious meals. The question is, how can we, like Madge Watt, work together to find solutions? How can we support local food initiatives, reduce food waste, and ensure that no one in our communities goes without? Madge Watt's legacy reminds us that change doesn't start with governments or policymakers alone. It starts with people. It starts with women like you and me, with us. Madge insisted that women should make their own rules rather than conforming to those made by men. So let's be inspired by her work, join forces, and continue her mission of resilience, empowerment, and community strength. This is the driving force that established ACWW. The resulting strength of ACWW organization lies in the emphasis of women's well-being through education and learning. The well-being of their families and their communities in which they live are impacted by the work of ACWW. The legacy of Madge Watt lives on as we continue to work at empowering women to use their collective voice to bring about needed change.
Thank you, Marie. I did not know about all the work Madge Watt did during the war and after. Lynn, I now want to hear more about the FWIC new project, Sustainable Style. What is it and why was it put into action?
Thank you, Denise. You will recall that over the last year, ACWW Canada area shared ideas on how to address food waste. Practical ideas on buying, preparing, storing, and composting food were discussed and shared. And the information helped us to understand how we could make a difference by changing our habits on food waste. As the FWIC board reviewed potential projects for this triennium, there was much in the media about the fashion industry, fast fashion, and the cost to the environment. Taking a page from the food waste discussion, the board decided to look at sustainable style through mindful consumption. So what is mindful consumption? Mindful consumption refers to the practice of being aware and intentional about the things we buy, use, and consume. It involves considering the impact of our choices on the environment, society, and our well-being. Instead of mindlessly buying and using things, mindful consumption encourages us to be thoughtful, reflective, and conscious about our consumption habits. There are 6 key aspects of mindful consumption. The first one is quality over quantity. Instead of constantly accumulating new things, mindful consumers tend to focus on quality, long-lasting items. They may choose to buy less, but invest in durable, high-quality products. Number 2, ethical choices. It involves supporting brands and products that are ethically produced, respecting fair labor practices, and promoting social good. People may choose to avoid companies with harmful business practices or those contributing to exploitation. Number 3, health and well-being. Mindful consumption also focuses on the impact of what we spend on our health and well-being. This includes being aware of the clothes we wear, the products we use on our bodies, the food we eat, and how these contribute to both our personal health and the planet's health. Number 4, environmental impact. Mindful consumers think about the ecological footprint of their purchases. They may prioritize products that are sustainably sourced, eco-friendly, or have minimal waste. Number 5, reduction of waste. Mindful consumption often means reducing waste through rethinking, refusing, reducing, reusing, repairing, regifting, or recycling. It encourages buying items that are longer lasting, have less packaging, and supporting circular economies where goods are reused, repaired, or recycled. 6th one is action. Practicing mindfulness in consumption means regularly reflecting on one's habits, asking questions, and taking action from either a personal perspective or by our federal and provincial organizations. Questions to ask ourselves: do I really need this? Is this purchase aligned with my values? How will this choice affect the world around me? And what are areas of concern that should be put into resolutions? In essence, mindful consumption is about being more conscious and deliberate in the way we consume, with an emphasis on sustainability, ethics, and personal responsibility. It's about making choices that align with a broader sense of purpose and impact rather than acting impulsively or out of habit. We are at the beginning stages of the project, and as we work through this project, we will learn about the fashion industry, its challenges, the impact it has on our image, either young or old, how we can practice the 7 R's, and learn about the differences of made in Canada, produced in Canada, and designed in Canada, and ultimately identify areas where we can advocate for change by taking action in the form of resolutions.
Wow, you've given us much to think about. Mindful thinking about our behaviors. At this time, I'm ready to pass the hosting role on to Marie. She will talk about ACWW advocacy with presenter Dr. Elizabeth Ann Kelly. Marie, I pass the baton on to you.
Thank you, Denise. Sustainable style through mindful consumption. What a wonderful topic FWIC has chosen for their project. Identifying and taking action in form of resolutions and recommendations is certainly a type of advocacy. ACWW takes all resolutions and recommendations presented and approved by our membership very seriously, for we know that action on advocacy begins with you, the membership. Advocacy can happen in a number of ways at all levels of this organization as women work together, raising their collective voice on issues that affect them, their families, and their community. This evening, Dr. Elizabeth Ann Kelly, ACWW's lead on advocacy, will give you further insight into the role of advocacy as we begin a two-part ACWW advocacy workshop. We want to give you tools for your advocacy toolbox so you can use them right where you are at. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Elizabeth Ann Kelly, who certainly now currently serves on the Board of Trustees of the Associated Country Women of the World as Advocacy Lead. She has a broad experience in advocacy for women and girls at the global level over the past decade. Dr. Kelly spent 5 years as the Society of the Sacred Heart Girls Education and Programming Policy Coordinator at the United Nations. In this role, she served as a non-governmental delegate at the United Nations, representing the students of the Sacred Heart Network, working with international organizations to improve educational outcomes, poverty reduction, and lessening global inequities with a focus on girls and women. Her strategy was to create a space, an environment girls from the Sacred Heart schools around the world could be encouraged how to work with the United Sustainable Development Goals, to share their thoughts and actions in improving the world, creating local advocacy programs, Dr. Kelly's research focused on data analysis of the content for success for girls' education, including identifying obstacles to educational achievements at international level. While studying as a graduate student, Dr. Kelly also served as the university's graduate equity and inclusion chair, and was a resource for all graduate students in need of support, with specific emphasis on representing the needs of the international BIPOC and LGBTQ and disabled students on the university campus. I now turn it over to you, Dr. Kelly.
Good evening and welcome to my talk here for WI Day in Canada. Today I'm going to be talking about Find Your Story, how to be a successful advocate and design an advocacy campaign. This is the first half of 2 talks that we'll be doing ACWW in partnership with WI Canada. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Elizabeth Ann Kelly, and I am the Advocacy Lead for Associated Country Women of the World. And I have been working in advocacy for almost a decade now, so this is something that I'm very passionate about, not just being an advocate, but actually helping other people to become better advocates and design their own advocacy campaigns from the grassroots up. I always view my job at ACWW as not being the one to speak, but the one that is creating space so that you, the people on the ground, have the space to speak. So where I like to start is how to be an ACE in advocacy. And ACE starts for attention, coalition, and emotion. When you're trying to be an advocate, the first thing you need is people's attention. The second thing you need to be thinking about is your coalition. Who are you working with? And then E for emotion. One of the most powerful things we have as women in advocacy is our emotion. We have the ability to talk to people and to bring out emotions in them and to share our emotions. So I always say, don't be afraid of emotion, use it to your advantage. And we're going to talk about how we do that. So we'll start with attention, because you want to grab people's attention. You have 8 seconds. If you are meeting a random person on the street, you want them to stay and listen, you have 8 seconds to make them do that. If you're talking an online campaign, you have about 4 seconds. You have half the time online that you would in person. And there are various ways of doing this. Bright colors, clear graphics are really helpful. what I always like to recommend is if you are on the street, have a very small pamphlet, like maybe this big, that is bright colors, clear graphics, really easy to just hand someone. They can grab it politely, even if they don't care, and stick it in their pocket. But, maybe 4 months down the line, they are cleaning out their coat after the winter. They pull out this thing and they're like, oh, I don't even remember this. What is it? And then they might look at it, or they might look at it right away. But either way, eventually they might look at your thing. So I like to do a trifold one, because then you get 6 different slides. So you have a square that you fold into 3, and that way you have a front and a back, and you can have a title, you can have some basic facts about whatever you're advocating about, some recommendations, and then maybe your contact info so that they are able to get involved if they decide that they would like to. But making sure it's bright, it's clear, it's very easy to understand is important. Another helpful thing, especially online, is breaking social norms. Now, I'm not saying that you should do this in a way that is disgusting or angering or that kind of thing, but just sometimes being a little bit silly is a really great way to get people's attention, because humans like novelty. There's a great experiment that you can do with any babies in your life. It's very fun. If you show them a completely novel object, something that they've never seen before, they will stare at it, usually for about 30, 40 seconds. And you take it away, and then 10 minutes later, you show it to them again. They'll probably look at it for far less time than they did the first time, because it's no longer novel. Now, as adults, we still like novelty. Humans will always crave novelty. So if you find something new, it grabs your attention. You want to pay attention. You want to learn about it. And as adults, we rarely see truly novel things. So it actually works even better for us as adults than it does for babies in some ways. A really good example of attention grabbing, how to go viral, how to find these things and have a really good successful campaign, is the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, which is what the picture on your screen is. For those of you who don't know, in 2014, in July and August of 2014, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge went completely viral. Over the course of these 2 months, 1/3 of Americans took part in this Ice Bucket Challenge, where people took a bucket of ice water and dumped it over their heads, or maybe they had a friend do it. There are various ways of doing it. And then they would nominate 10 other people to take this challenge, saying, my name is Elizabeth Ann Kelly, and I nominate these people to also take part in the Ice Bucket Challenge. It went completely viral for several reasons. Number one, it was novel. I mean, it seems silly, but it's a bucket of ice being dumped on people's heads. But apparently, as humans, we found that very amusing. Number two, it was a very low bar for entry. Most people have smartphones that they could record that video on. It was about 30 seconds. You could upload it to whatever social media you wanted. And then also there was social pressure, because you would get nominated and then you were nominating someone else. And usually these were people that you had a social relationship with. So you wanted to show that you were participating in this viral moment. Now, it seems silly. It seems like, okay, yeah, it went viral, no big deal. Why does that matter? So it actually did a great amount of good for ALS. In terms of awareness, the Wikipedia page for ALS had an additional 2.7 million views in August 2014, compared to most months. On average, they were getting, the ALS page on Wikipedia would get a couple 100,000 views. So that extra 2.7 million was huge. It also raised an estimated 250 million American dollars for ALS research. So they got a whole lot of extra money, and they got a lot more awareness of what ALS is in that 2 months. And that's where grabbing people's attention, if you can go viral, if you can get people involved, that can be really helpful, even if what you're actually doing, the ice bucket challenge, has nothing to do with your actual advocacy, because getting dumped over the head with a bucket of water doesn't have much to do with ALS, but it's still, because it was the ALS ice bucket challenge, got people's attention, got people aware of an issue. So that's attention, and why you want people's attention and how to get it in some ways. The next thing is building your coalition. So you want to identify your stakeholders, identifying key policymakers and decision makers who can help you achieve your goals, whatever they are, but also finding groups that can support you and you can support. You don't need to have the same goals, you just need to have compatible goals. And then you can work together to organize events to raise awareness across platforms and communities. By building your coalition, you have access then not just to the people who are directly involved with your advocacy, but with people who are directly involved with your partner's advocacy as well. One of my favorite examples of building a coalition is the lesbians and gays support the minors. Because this is an example of how you can find friends in the strangest of places. In 1984, in the UK, there was a miners' strike, and there were thousands of miners and their families in need of support because these miners were out of work, their families were struggling to survive. The government was using very union-busting techniques to try and end the strikes, and that was causing significant difficulties for the families of the miners and causing difficulties in these mining communities. A bunch of members of the LGBT community in London noticed that a lot of the techniques that were being used to suppress the miners and harass them were also techniques that were used to harass members of the LGBT community in London and other major cities in the UK. And they decided that there should be some mutual support here. So they created Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners, where they started fundraising for the miners. They basically were out on the streets shaking buckets, saying who has spare change, putting this money together and finding communities, sometimes in Wales, sometimes in the north of England, to help support and give direct monetary as well as social support for these families. At the time in the 1980s, of course, the AIDS epidemic was just getting started. And it was a major issue, a major social issue. Many people were very uncomfortable with members of the LGBT community. And so, especially in more conservative rural areas, this caused some shock, if you will. However, through this support, through reaching out to these miners, through working together, they raised quite a lot of money. They also raised awareness for across the communities. They built this coalition together, and while the strikes in the end mostly did fail, the miners were incredibly grateful for the support that they received from to them the strangest of places. And so in 1985 at the London Pride March, the National Union of Mine Workers and chapters of the National Union of Mine Workers from across the country led the Pride Parade in London. And at the time, the National Union of Mine Workers was the single largest bloc vote in the Labour Party in the UK. And through their efforts in advocacy, the Labour Party in 1985 and 1986 was the first major party in the UK to enshrine LGBT rights in their policy manifestos and to start working on the in Parliament and in government towards LGBT rights. So this was where coalition, rural miners, often deeply conservative, meeting a bunch of city LGBT people, they came together, and yes, they had very different goals, but their goals were compatible. They were able to work together, and they did change the world. So that's why coalition building is so important. And then the final thing that you want to talk about is the power of emotion. So as women, men fear our tears. We Should never be afraid of being emotional or vulnerable emotionally. Physically vulnerable, don't do that. But never be afraid to be emotionally vulnerable with people, because you can help them understand. You can create empathy in other people. We are social creatures as humans. So when we talk to someone, it's not just you holding an emotion in a conversation. What actually is happening from a psychological perspective is those emotions are bouncing between you and the person you're talking to. So if the person you're talking to is feeling sad and is talking about their feelings, often you will start feeling sad as well. And so you're sharing that emotional connection. And the same goes for anger or happiness, joy, all of these emotions. It's not just a singular thing. It's bouncing back. And this is how we relate to each other as humans. This is one of the beautiful things that makes us human. And it's something that we can use to our advantage to help people and to help our advocacy be better. Part of this is also being consistent. So you might convert some of your supporters the first time they talk to you, but many will need multiple touch points before signing on. So again, that's why I recommend having those little pamphlets that you can just shove in people's pocket. People can just shove in their pockets, about the size of a Post-it note, maybe something like that. That just has some basic facts and figures, maybe a picture and your contact information, so that if you do evoke an emotion, but they aren't willing to deal with it right then, they have a way of getting in contact with you later on. And then sharing your stories. So it's very nice to have facts and figures, but also stories and narratives, because stories are meant to evoke emotion. And some emotional responses are more productive than others, to be fair, but sympathy, empathy, and a certain amount of anger can be very, very helpful. An excellent example of this, if you ever want to watch the video of Emma Gonzalez's speech at the March for Our Lives. In 2018, Emma and their classmates were involved in a school shooting in Florida. They lost many friends that day. And the students came together and held a March for Our Lives, where they tried to speak directly to politicians, explaining why it's not fair to be in danger for your life in school, where you are obligated to be as a child. And also, children should never be frightened for their lives. I think that's a basic tenet that most of us can get behind. So one of the things Emma did that's truly amazing is they came onto the stage and they didn't say anything. They set their timer on their phone and they stood there in silence for 5 minutes and 28 seconds. They stood there and cried on the stage in silence for 5 minutes and 28 seconds. Because that is how long the shooting took place, how long the shooting lasted. They made everyone in that audience stand there and bear witness to the pain, to the tears, and to feel that with them. And it is an incredibly hard thing to watch. But one of the beautiful things about watching this speech is you can also see how the crowd is reacting to this situation. You see them trying to, at first thinking, oh, they're stuck. They're a kid, they need our help, they need our support, and chanting, and making them feel okay. And then you see them going, that's not working. This is making me uncomfortable. I don't know what's going on. And eventually you see the crowd settling in and understanding that it was the job of them as audience members to simply witness this child's pain and to bear that, and by bearing that witness, become involved in the situation. And this is one of those things where it is the power of emotion, because Emma's not saying anything, but they are forcing this group of people to share an emotion, and a negative emotion that we do not enjoy sharing. We do not like bearing witness to the pain of a child and not be able to fix it. And it makes you all the more interested in helping and advocating yourself by getting involved, by trying to end gun violence in schools, that kind of thing. So this is where, if you can find an emotion, if you can find a story and a narrative that works for you on a personal level, that gets people involved. And this is something that can be a bit tricky, because it can't be a lie. It has to be the truth. It has to be something where you yourself are having a true emotion. Otherwise, the people you're talking to won't believe you. So find the story that makes you feel emotional, that you can share with people so that they empathize with you, and so that they can come together with you and get involved. Try and make sure that it relates to them, or broadly relates to people. Everyone has sisters, mothers, that kind of thing. Maybe if you're working in women's advocacy, trying to relate to that helps, but also if you're working with someone working with safety, ask someone, what makes you feel unsafe? What happens when you do this? And then you get that conversation going so that you can share those emotions between you. So those are the big things: attention, coalition, and emotion. And this is how you want to be heard in the chaos. You want a very simple message with some numbers. You want to have an elevator speech. You want to have a handout with clear graphics and colors, making sure it's small enough to fit in a pocket. You want to get people to your event. At your event, you want to have powerful, persuasive, and diverse speakers. And this diversity is incredibly important. Professionally, I am also a librarian, and one of the things I often talk about with children is you can have mirror books and window books. And mirror books are books where the child is reading the book and identifying with the characters, going, oh, that's me, I'm in the book too, that's so cool. But you also want window books where they're going, that's not me, but those are interesting people, those are new people, I like to learn about those people. So having a diversity of speakers where you have speakers that your audience will automatically identify with, but also having speakers that your audience will want to be learning more about, can be very helpful. And also, you want to get as much contact information as possible as you're doing this, so you can follow up with attendees. Often the best way of doing this is getting people's email addresses, but also you can go old school and get phone numbers. Or you can go completely new school and get their social media information. However you think will work best for you. You can also say, hey, here is our social media information, please follow us, like us, so on and so forth, because that can help extend your reach with the various algorithms on all of the platforms. I'm going to go back quickly to elevator speech. And I always save this for last because it's a fun parlor trick. Essentially, an elevator speech is something that is about 30 seconds long, that you can give explaining why your issue is important and why a politician, a decision maker, or really any member of the public should care and get involved. And the reason it's 30 seconds is because that is how long the average elevator ride takes. So it is how long, when a politician is in an elevator, that they are stuck with you. You have their attention because they have nowhere else to go. And an example of this, so my PhD is in educational psychology. I wrote it on the importance of supportive environments in girls' education around the world. And this is the elevator speech I have for that. Girls' education matters because when you educate girls, babies don't die. The girls and their children go on to live happier, more financially stable, and healthier lives. And it is one of the best ways of ending intergenerational poverty. And the biggest indicators, the biggest predictive features in girls' education is quite simple. They are more successful, they are more likely to finish secondary school if the law says that they have to be there, if they feel safe that they are there, and if the society that they are surrounded with believes in the equality of the sexes. That's it. That is my elevator speech. It takes about 30 seconds. So I would like to thank you all again for coming, for giving me your attention. And if ever you want to get in contact with me, do please feel free to do so. Lynn McLean has my contact information. You can get it from her. And I would be happy to take any questions.